and they brought me back.
You can't quit until you try. You can't live until you die.
It's all about timing. If you get to the person right after the heart stopped, you could bring them back to life.
Nikki Sixx had cheated death again, but the news had already hit the streets.
By this point, Vince Neil's limo driver has already called Vince to tell him that Nikki Sixx has died.
Doctors detoxed and stabilized Nikki. The next morning he came to. Still dazed and confused, he tore out all the needles and tubes and walked out wearing only his pants.
I pulled the tubes out of my arms and escape because I'm insane at that point. I mean, isn't that what addicts do?
He didn't realize that the whole world thought he was dead.
The entire city of Los Angeles thinks Nikki Sixx is dead.
And I went to the parking lot and there was two girls out there crying. And I knocked on their window and scared the hell out of them because it had already started to spread that I was dead. And I asked for a ride home.
As they dropped him off, the girls made him promise he wouldn't do drugs again.
And then he shoots up, he said, the biggest load of heroin he'd ever shot before in his life.
I wanted to show how bad it can get.
December 23rd, 1987. Motley Crue's Nikki Sixx had overdosed on heroin for a second time the night before. He was alive, thanks only to an EMT who was a Motley Crue fan, and 2 shots of adrenaline. As doctors feverishly worked to keep him alive, word was spreading that the rock star had finally gone over the edge. Returning home, he changed the message on his answering machine.
He did record a new voicemail like saying, "Hi, this is Nikki. I'm sorry I can't come to the phone. I'm dead."
Everybody gets high. Everybody gets low.
He certainly looked dead. Nikki had lost over 40 pounds and wrote in his diary, "The scabs on my arms are festering with infection. I can't breathe from all the blow and I can't seem to get drunk anymore. I'm at the edge. I feel like I'm standing at death's door and no one will let me in."
No one knows better than an addict. I know the right dose, I know the right drug, I know the right way to handle my life. I know what the future looks like. It's all bullshit. I don't know any of that. I'm dying.
But incredibly, within hours of returning from the hospital, he found another stash of heroin.
You know when you're a junkie? When you can't not do junk. You're an addict when you can't not do it.
And then he shoots up the biggest load of heroin he'd ever shot before in his life. Passes out.
Nikki had come a long way from his lonely childhood in small-town Idaho. He'd lived on the streets of Hollywood, chasing a dream of rock and roll. It was a dream that had made him a millionaire, a dream that had taken him around the world and built a following of millions of rabid fans. But on Christmas morning of 1987, he woke up in his house alone, a needle still in his arm.
Blood in the palm of my hand from running down my arm, from the needle just moving around and blood just trickling down my forearm. It was like, this has to end differently. And that was it.
Nikki Sixx had finally bottomed out.
I don't want to die.
At some point, the mind sort of takes over and you realize, I'm going to be dead if I don't stop doing this.
The bottoming out can occur actually at any phase. Somebody can get up the next morning, be shaking and very anxious and realize I got to do something about it now.
But Nikki had tried to kick before.
It was live or die at that point, and I think, I literally probably scared the hell out of me. For a guy who was heading straight towards the brick wall with his foot all the way down, somehow had the fear of God put in him.
It wasn't like Nicky's a bad boy, he got drunk last night. Nicky's a bad boy, he did heroin last night. No, Nicky's a sick guy that is doing these things because he can't help himself.
But his managers could. They canceled the upcoming European tour and gave Nicky an ultimatum.
And we said, that's it. We're done with this. You guys, like, straighten up, clean up, and get out of here.
It was all over. Nicky had moved from Heroin House into a place appropriately called Hidden Hills and quit cold turkey.
Heroin's the hardest thing in the world to get off of.
When you quit cold turkey, you go through a horrible withdrawal, vomiting, restlessness, insomnia. It's a horrible experience, and people liken it to feeling like they're going to die.
The death kind of gave him a will to live again that he hadn't had before.
I wake up in the morning and it comes back to you.
For over a year, Nicky struggled to stay off drugs and adjust to life sober. It was harder than anything he could have imagined. During his addiction, heroin had taken over every single part of his reality.
He started to discover life without being screwed up all the time. I mean, I remember Nicky saying to me, like, this is new. I didn't even know how to go to sleep. I know how to pass out.
You know, learning how to be social, learning how to be human, learning how to be non-rock god-like, that was work.
Learning to live again was one thing. But after a year of brutal recovery, one big question remained. Would he still be able to rock? (1988) had been the toughest year of Nikki Sixx's entire life. He had quit heroin and spent a year in agonizing recovery. Now he was clean. But could a sober Nicky still be a rock star? Nicky soon found out. In September 1989, Dr. Feelgood was released. It was Motley Crue's best-selling album ever, hitting #1 on the Billboard chart and going platinum almost immediately. Nicky's Kickstart My Heart drew on first-hand experience.
Kickstart My Heart is as adrenaline-soaked and as powerful and as gut-wrenching as anything that they had done.
That's one of the greatest rock songs ever.
The entire tour was done sober.
The band is dangerous. The best I've ever heard the band was when everybody was firing on all cylinders. Way more dangerous than when intoxicated. The band was brutal. And I think that, you know, that just shows, you know, how good it can get. I've been blessed to be able to survive an addiction, to be able to come through the other side of it.
So Nicky decided to give something back. He established an arts and music program, Running Wild in the Night, for runaway kids at Covenant House, a homeless center in Los Angeles.
Learning how to record music, learning how to play an instrument, learning how to paint, learning how to act. And it's been wonderful because it gives people just one more reason to stick. And if they stick long enough and they get it, the percentage of survival is so much higher.
He is a role model for our kids. He's been there, and our youth look at him and say, if Nicky did it, I can do it too.
If people can look at me and say, wow, that guy can do it, and he had similar experiences to us, then, you know, that's all I can ask for.
Then, in 2003, Nicky rediscovered the diaries he kept while in the depths of his addiction.
This is I had overdosed in London exactly a year earlier. Valentine's Day 1986. We had played Hammersmith Odeon, and the second we left the stage, I caught a taxi with Andy McCoy of Mahoi Rocks. He took me to a heroin apartment in the real shabby neighborhood. I was drunk, and I remember I was impressed the dealer had clean needles, and he offered to shoot me up. I let him. Big mistake.
Well, just look at yourself. Can you see where you are?
I've kept diaries for a long time, but when I actually found those diaries after 20 years, I was like, you know, how did I get there? It, to me, was confirmation that I had dealt with a lot of the things that had driven me to addiction.
It was a tough decision, but Nikki decided the diaries could help others avoid the trap he fell into. He was right. The resulting book, The Heroin Diaries, A Year in the Life of a Shattered Rock Star, became a New York Times bestseller, and it remained on the list for 4 months.
It takes a lot of guts to put out a book like Heroin Diaries. I can't believe he went through what he went through.
I never thought I'd see the day when Nikki would become the spokesperson for rehabilitation.
And just like when he was a kid leaving Idaho, Nikki's found himself drawn back to his passion, music. With friends DJ Ashba and James Michael, Nikki formed a new band, 6 a.m. Their first project was the Heroin Diaries soundtrack. A single from the record, Life is Beautiful, popped at #2 on the rock radio charts.
He died and came back quite literally, and he chooses to continue to live, and I think people are inspired by that.
I know Nikki's there for a lot of other artists who call him up and need, you know, somebody who understands what they're going through. He's a good dad, even outside his own family.
Why would I not give back for someone who's received so much? The Heroin Diaries, the book, or the soundtrack, the new band 6 a.m., Motley Crue. And I have everything that I ever wanted. It's like a fairy tale.
Alive, just